Hello, and welcome to Murmurs of Time, where the past unfolds gently, like the pages of an old silk-bound scroll. Tonight, we drift far across time and space, back to a land shaped by dynasties, empires, and the long shadows of stone walls stretching across silent, wind-bitten landscapes. This is a story not of great battles, but of what happens between them. You may have heard of the Great Wall of China, its sheer scale, its ancient stones, its place in the grand stories of empires. But tonight, we won't be walking with emperors or marching with triumphant generals. We'll be keeping quiet watch beside the wall, standing still in the cold, endlessly scanning the empty horizon. This journey is about what it meant to live at the edge of empire, where life was as monotonous as it was harsh, where power pulsed from faraway capitals, but daily existence meant rule, orders, and the sound of boots on frozen dirt. So now, find a quiet space, let your shoulders drop, let your breathing slow, and imagine yourself standing beneath the wind-worn towers of Han China. Let's begin. Why you'd regret being a wall guard in Han China: isolation, hunger, and watching nothing happen for months. Imagine yourself standing on a crumbling stone parapet in the early hours before dawn. The wind cuts through your robes and rustles the brush that clings to the northern edge of the empire. The stars are fading, and a pale sliver of morning is beginning to show beyond the mountains. You shift your weight, legs stiff from hours of standing still, your hands wrapped tight in worn fabric that barely holds back the cold. You are a soldier, posted to the Great Wall during the Han Dynasty. And if you're hoping for glory, you're going to be waiting a very long time. The myth versus the reality. When we think of soldiers, we often imagine action, marching, battles. But for the tens of thousands assigned to the Great Wall during the Han era, roughly 200 BCE to 200 CE, daily life was defined by waiting, watching, enduring. This wasn't the tall, gleaming wall of postcards and documentaries. Much of the wall during this time was rammed earth, dirt, and gravel, held in place with timber, dusty, fragile. It crumbled in storms, faded under sunlight, and had to be rebuilt again and again. Even the structures weren't uniform. Some stretches were nothing more than low ridges. Others had guard towers made of stone or wood. And yet, to the soldiers stationed there, each section was both a lifeline and a prison. Meals, monotony, and malnutrition. The rations were meager. Imagine scooping warm millet porridge from a cracked bowl, your only meal before a shift. Sometimes there was dried meat, salted vegetables, but mostly it was gruel. Gruel for breakfast, gruel for lunch, and maybe, if supplies made it through the snow, some pickled cabbage for dinner. Hunger was common. Supplies had to be carried long distances over unforgiving terrain. And if bandits or storms interrupted the route, well, you simply went without. There were long stretches when the only change in routine was the weather. You woke up cold, stood in formation, marched the perimeter, wrote reports, sharpened weapons you'd likely never use, and watched the horizon for shadows that never moved. Days bled into each other like ink on rice paper, and still you stood. Company in silence, you weren't alone, but it didn't feel like companionship. Your fellow soldiers were often conscripts, farmers turned fighters pressed into service. Some had been convicted of minor crimes and offered the choice: labor or the wall. Conversations were brief, each man lost in his own thoughts, or perhaps more truthfully, trying not to think at all. Many of them dreamed of home, of wives and children, of steaming bowls of noodles or the gentle sound of rain in the south. But the wall had no room for dreams. Only cold wind, coarse blankets, and the rhythmic beat of patrols. Boredom as a burden, strangely, it wasn't the battles that broke a man. It was the lack of them. Boredom hung heavier than armor. There was nothing to do, and yet everything had to be done exactly as ordered. Mess up a report, You could be flogged, fall asleep on watch. Your punishment could be worse. The irony was cruel. Your role was to protect a border constantly under threat, yet most of the time, nothing happened at all. You weren't fighting enemies. You were fighting time. Moments of disruption, and then, one day after weeks or months of silence, a fire would appear on the ridge. A beacon, lit to warn of movement. Your heart would pound. You'd rush to your post, spears would be distributed, armor hastily donned. And just as quickly as it began, the danger would pass. A caravan, a false alarm, a group of Xiongnu riders testing the perimeter. You would never know for sure, and the silence would return. More days, more wind, more of the same. Why it mattered. Despite the tedium, your presence did mean something. The wall wasn't just a barrier, it was a message. A signal to outsiders that this land was guarded, that the Han Dynasty saw and knew the shape of its borders. And for those living within them, the wall offered a strange kind of reassurance, even if they never saw it, even if they forgot the men who guarded it. A life fading into stone. Many soldiers never made it back, not from battle, but from boredom, from exhaustion, from exposure or illness, or simply being forgotten. Graves dotted the roadside. Simple markers. No names, just stone, slowly worn away by the same wind that carried your breath each night into the darkness. So now, as the stars above fade completely and the gray morning takes hold, you reach for your bowl. The grow's warm but thin. Another shift begins, and you wonder how many more you'll endure before you're replaced by another man just like you, watching the same sky, whistling to the same wind, waiting for something to happen. And now we turn from this lonely stretch of dust and silence to the silk-draped corridors of a different chapter in China's story, a woman unlike any before or after her, a throne held by scandal, strategy, and brilliance. The reign of Wu Zetian China's only female emperor. Scandal, blood, brilliance. The wind fades, the dust settles. We leave the bleak watchtowers of the wall behind and step into the heart of imperial ambition. Imagine yourself walking along a shaded stone path lined with whispering pines. The morning is warm, the air sweet with the scent of incense drifting from temple halls. Silk robes swish softly with each step, and above you the palace rises tiered, golden-roofed, austere in its elegance. And at its center sits a woman, composed, imposing, eyes bright with vision and resolve like iron. Her name is Wu Zetian, and she is unlike anyone the empire has seen before. A girl in a man's world, Wu Zetian was not born into power. She was born in the year 624, during the height of the Tang Dynasty. Her family was privileged but not royal. Her path to influence began the way many women's did at the time, as a concubine. At age 14, she entered the palace of Emperor Taizong, one girl among many. Her duties were modest music, poetry, companionship. She learned quickly. She listened carefully, and when Taizong died, her story should have ended. Instead, it began anew. The return from convent walls, as was tradition. Concubines of the emperor who bore no children were often sent to Buddhist convents after his death. Wu Zetian was expected to live out her days in quiet devotion, but she didn't. Sometime later, she reappeared back in the palace. Not just anywhere, but as a favored companion of the new emperor, Gaozong Taizong's son. How she returned is debated. Did Gaozong bring her back? Did she maneuver her way in? The historical record is silent on details but clear on outcome. Wu Zetian rose through the palace ranks once more, and this time she wouldn't stop. Climbing with quiet fire at first, she was simply a favored consort. Then she became empress. And eventually, when illness weakened the emperor, she ruled from behind the curtain, issuing orders in his name, attending audiences in his stead. She was meticulous, intelligent, unapologetically strategic. She surrounded herself with scholars, reformers, and loyal officials. She crushed rivals quietly, surgically. Some whispered of poison, others of forged edicts, false accusations, and secret imprisonments. But in public, she was serene, measured, wrapped in brocade and power. The first and only. When Emperor Gaozong died, their sons were too weak, too easily manipulated. Wuzeitian didn't just guide the empire, she claimed it. In 690, she did what no woman in Chinese history had done. She declared herself emperor, not empress dowager, not regent, but sovereign ruler in her own name. She founded the Zhou dynasty, interrupting the Tang line. A bold move, an unthinkable move. And yet, the empire did not collapse. Policies and the people Wu Zetian wasn't merely a figurehead, she governed. She expanded the imperial examination system, opening doors to talented scholars regardless of their birth. She commissioned great works of art and literature. She strengthened the bureaucracy. And in times of famine, she ordered relief and lowered taxes. The common people, many of them, saw her as just. Even as the aristocracy seethed. She was a contradiction, a ruler who promoted Buddhism yet punished monks who threatened her authority. A woman who advanced other women yet destroyed potential female rivals. She knew the rhythm of power and never missed a beat. Scandal in the records. Later Confucian historians, deeply uncomfortable with a woman emperor, painted Wu Zetian as cruel, immoral, even monstrous. They wrote of her eliminating her own children, of lovers kept in secret passageways, of executions in hidden chambers. Some of these stories may hold fragments of truth. Many were exaggerations, tools to discredit a woman who had wielded imperial authority too well. But the records agree on one point: Wu Zetian was effective, she was feared, and she endured. A return to the shadows in the final years of her reign, her health declined. Her court became divided. And eventually, in a quiet palace coup, she was persuaded gently, carefully, to abdicate. She returned power to the Tang dynasty, retired from public view, and died shortly after. Her tombstone, unusually, was left blank. No inscription, no praise. No condemnation, just silence. Perhaps it was meant as punishment, or perhaps it was the only fitting tribute, because Wu Zetian wrote her legacy not in stone, but in the memory of a nation. As we step away from the shadowed court and the sharp scent of incense, we look further back beneath the earth itself. Thousands of warriors, each with a different face, lying in patient silence, waiting for eternity to pass. The Terracotta Army mystery, thousands of soldiers, none alike, why, how, and what's still hidden. Let us drift now from the imperial court to a place even more silent, a place where time seems to have stopped altogether. We move from sunlight to shadow, from the grandeur of palaces to the cool stillness of underground chambers. The air is heavy with earth, and the light is dim. All around, there is the sense of something watching. And indeed, thousands are watching. Rank after rank of warriors frozen in place. Not in flesh and blood, but in clay, kill-fired and carved. Silent sentinels who have waited for over 2,000 years beneath the soil. This is the world of the Terracotta Army, a burial for an emperor. Our story begins with a ruler whose ambitions were as vast as the lands he conquered, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. In the 3rd century BCE, after centuries of war between rival kingdoms, he brought them together under one banner, one code of law, one system of measurement. He built roads, standardized currency, even began the early version of what would one day become the Great Wall. And yet, for all his power, he feared death. Preparing for forever, Qin Shi Huang did not seek peace in the next life, he sought control. He ordered the construction of a vast underground mausoleum near modern-day Xi'an, a sprawling complex unlike anything the world had seen. He did not plan to go into the afterlife alone. He would take an army with him. A hidden army unearthed in 1974, a group of farmers digging a well struck something hard. They didn't know it then, but they had found the edge of one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history, a life-size clay warrior. Soon, others emerged, hundreds, then thousands. Today, what has been uncovered is only a fraction of what lies below. 3 large pits have been excavated, revealing over 8,000 individual figures, soldiers, chariots, horses, and not a single face is repeated, each one different, a turn of the head, a furrow in the brow, a distinct hairstyle, a unique mustache, a slightly uneven stance. It is not just an army. It is a portrait of one. Why so many? Theories abound. Some believe it was to mirror the emperor's living army, a force meant to defend him in the afterlife. Others suggest it was symbolic, an act of asserting eternal power, a way to continue reigning even in death. What's clear is the scale. These weren't simple figurines. They were sculpted in sections, torsos, limbs, heads, and assembled with extraordinary care. Painters added color-bright reds, greens, purples. Today, most of that color has faded with exposure to air, but once this army shone, there were even weapons, real ones. Bronze swords sharp enough to cut, arrowheads bundled in quivers, spears and halberds of hardened metal. This was not art for admiration. It was readiness for war beyond life, labor, and legacy. Creating the Terracotta Army took immense resources. Thousands of laborers worked for decades. Craftsmen shaped and fired the clay. Officials oversaw every detail. And then, after the emperor's death, they sealed the tomb. They buried the army. And according to some accounts, they ensured secrecy in the most brutal way. Historical records suggest that workers and artisans may have been entombed alongside the figures, alive or executed, so that no one could reveal the tomb's secrets. Whether this is entirely true, we may never know. But it casts a long shadow over the site. The central tomb still untouched to this day. The emperor's actual burial chamber remains sealed. A massive earthen mound rises above it, unexplored. Why? Because legend tells of rivers of mercury flowing through the tomb. Tests of soil samples around the site do show unusually high levels of mercury. There's also the fear of damaging what lies within. Once opened, the site could lose its fragile balance. Paint may crumble, structures may collapse, so it waits. The emperor sleeps on, his secrets held in darkness. Mysteries that remain. How were the figures fired at such high temperatures? Where were the molds, if no two are alike? What techniques allowed for such precision and such great volume? And most haunting of all, how much more lies buried? Only an estimated 1/4 of the full necropolis has been unearthed. There are believed to be entire battalions still beneath the soil. Acrobats, musicians, courtiers, even more soldiers, untouched by time. A place outside time. If you visit the site today, you'll enter a massive hall quiet except for the soft echoes of footsteps. You'll stand before ranks of warriors, their eyes cast forward. You may find yourself searching their faces, looking for recognition, for familiarity, and you may feel watched. It's not frightening, just still, deeply, endlessly still. They do not speak, they do not move, but they remain, not forgotten, not buried. Simply waiting. And now, from the solemn army locked in clay and earth, we journey to the heart of power itself, the Forbidden City, where silence was not from burial, but from ceremony. Not from secrecy, but from tradition. Life inside the Forbidden City, ritualized tedium and silk-wrapped secrets at the heart of Chinese imperial power. Now we drift forward in time, from underground chambers of eternal soldiers to a place just as silent, but very much above ground. The air is warmer here, tinged with the scent of sandalwood and lacquer. Red lacquered gates rise before you, roofed in yellow tiles that gleam like sunlight even in the dimming hours of the day. Welcome to the Forbidden City, not just a palace, but a world unto itself. A city within a city, hidden behind tall walls and guarded gates. A place that, for over 500 years, was both the symbol and seat of imperial China. But life inside was not the life of legends. There was no rushing, no drama, no wild movements. Everything here, moved with the grace of ritual and the weight of order. The heart of an empire, the shape of a dream, the Forbidden City was constructed in the early 15th century under the Yongle Emperor of the Ming Dynasty. Imagine nearly 1,000 buildings laid out in perfect symmetry, each gate, hall, courtyard, and pavilion placed not for convenience, but for symbolism. Every direction, every step had meaning. It was more than architecture. It was ideology in brick and tile, yellow tiles for the emperor, signifying earth and centrality, red walls for happiness and celebration, stone lions flanking entrances, always a pair, always one male and one female. The city itself whispered constantly of the emperor's divine right to rule, a life of ceremony. But for those who lived within its walls, life was not one of indulgence or excitement. It was a world of ritual. At dawn, the emperor rose not at leisure, but by custom. Attendants would dress him layer by layer, robes, sashes, headgear all precisely arranged. His day was mapped to the hour, the minute. Audiences with officials, ritual offerings, inspections, all done the same way, every single day. Even meals were ceremonies. The emperor did not eat with others. Dozens of dishes were prepared, each tested for poison, each tasted by officials before reaching him. Often, he would sample only a few, leaving the rest untouched. Servants in silence, the Forbidden City was populated by thousands of officials, guards, eunuchs, concubines, servants, and yet it remained strangely silent. No one raised their voice, no one ran. One walked with eyes lowered, back straight, steps measured. Even the birds seemed to sing more softly here. Eunuchs were perhaps the most visible figures behind the scenes, men castrated young to ensure loyalty and reduce threat. They rose to great administrative power. They were keepers of secrets, guardians of routines, messengers and manipulators alike. Some were kind, many were not, but all moved within the same rigid choreography of palace life. Concubines and loneliness. For the emperor's concubines, the Forbidden City was both a place of privilege and prison. They lived in elegant chambers, wore fine silks, and had attendants of their own, but most would never be called upon by the emperor. Many never saw him again after their selection. Their lives became cycles of waiting, embroidering, reading poetry, listening to the breeze in the courtyard, hoping for favor that rarely came. Some rose high like the famed Empress Dowager Cixi, who once began as a low-ranking concubine and later ruled the empire from behind a silk curtain. But most remained nameless, beautiful shadows, preserved in portraits and palace records, but not in memory. Seasons behind the walls, the Forbidden City had seasons of its own. In spring, the plum trees bloomed delicately in hidden gardens. In summer, fans stirred the still, humid air as shadows stretched long across stone courtyards. In autumn, crisp winds carried the rustle of paper lanterns and imperial edicts. And in winter, snow fell silently on gold tiles, muffling even the lightest footstep. Yet for all this beauty, life was repetitive. Ritual replaced spontaneity, duty overshadowed desire, few ever left. Many dreamed of doing so, but the Forbidden City rarely let go of its own. The world outside its walls, dynasties rose and fell. Famines came, invaders arrived, new philosophies took root. But within, time moved in circles. Even as European envoys arrived, even as gunpowder changed warfare, even as the Qing dynasty faltered, the Forbidden City continued its rituals. Like a great machine, winding through the centuries, until one day, it stopped. The fall of the last emperor in 1912, the last emperor Puyi, was forced to abdicate. Still a child, he remained within the palace walls, now little more than a guest in a crumbling dream. Eventually he was expelled, the gates closed, and the Forbidden City was open to the public. Today tourists wander its courtyards. They pose beneath dragon carvings. They admire ancient scrolls and delicate screens, but listen closely. You may still feel it, the rhythm of ritual, the weight of silence, the hush of silk on stone. A city that once dreamed of forever, and now sleeps open-eyed under the sun. Now, as our journey through the ages begins to draw to a close, let us settle once more. Let us reflect on those who stood watch, who ruled, who built, who waited. Their lives, monotonous, magnificent, or mysterious, have passed into stillness. And so too may yours for tonight. And now we drift once more back across the centuries, away from the walls of stone and silence, away from palaces and pits and forgotten names. The night deepens. And so too does our journey's close. We began tonight at the edge of empire, a soldier standing on the Great Wall of Han China, surrounded by wind and emptiness, fighting time with nothing but endurance. A life made of cold meals, stiff boots, and long shifts with little change. We stepped then into the shadows of power and met Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor. Brilliant, feared, and endlessly strategic. She rose not with violence, but with calculation, leaving behind a reign that reshaped the very idea of who could rule. From there, we descended beneath the earth, among the silent ranks of the Terracotta Army, each face distinct, each warrior forever on duty. A clay-bound echo of an emperor's fear of death and desire for control beyond it. And finally, we passed through the vermilion gates of the Forbidden City, where even the wind seemed to follow rules, and the lives of emperors, eunuchs, and concubines unfolded in soft repetition. A world wrapped in silk and ceremony, built to last forever, and yet ultimately left behind. What ties these places and people together is not only power, but stillness. A wall that stands for centuries, though its guards have long since turned to dust. A ruler who shook an empire, yet now lies beneath an unmarked stone. A legion of soldiers, lifelike and eternal yet unmoving beneath layers of earth. A palace so vast and intricate that its routines replaced reality. There is a kind of beauty in the quiet they left behind. A beauty in the rhythm of lives once lived, now settled, now still. And as you lie here now in the warmth and safety of the present, let those rhythms wash over you. The rustling of silk, the echo of boots on stone, the hush of distant wind. The burdens of those long ago are no longer yours to carry. Their worries, their duties, their cold dawns and silent nights, they've passed like dust on the wind. All that remains is the calm. You have walked far tonight across deserts, through throne rooms, beneath earth, and behind hidden gates. Let your breathing grow slower now. Let the past slip quietly into the distance. You are not on the wall. You are not beneath a mountain of clay. You are not bound by ritual or fear. You are here, and here. You can rest. Good night. From all of us at Murmurs of Time, sleep well and let history hold you gently.